The courtroom was tense that morning. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, illuminating the wood-paneled walls and the faces of the small crowd gathered inside. The case wasn't supposed to draw much attention, just another docket item on a busy day. But everything changed when 16-year-old Ava walked to the podium, clutching a thick folder of documents against her chest. Judge Morrison barely glanced at her. He was known for his gruff demeanor and didn't take kindly to what he considered theatrics, especially from teenagers. "Let's make this quick," he said, leaning back in his chair. "This is a court of law, not a debate club." Ava's hands trembled as she placed her folder on the podium. She was small for her age, with dark braids that framed her determined face. Her voice was quiet at first, almost drowned out by the shuffling of papers and murmurs from the crowd. But as she began to speak, a silence fell over the room. "Your Honor," she said, her voice steadying, "I stand here not because I want to, but because I have to. What's happening to my family and others like us is wrong. And today I'm going to prove it." Judge Morrison raised an eyebrow, a smirk tugging at the corners of his mouth. "Miss, this isn't a motivational seminar. Stick to the facts." The crowd chuckled nervously, but Ava didn't waver. She straightened her shoulders and opened her folder, revealing neatly organized evidence and handwritten notes. "With all due respect, Your Honor, the facts are exactly why I'm here." Ava's case revolved around a local policy that allowed landlords to evict tenants without cause, a practice that disproportionately affected low-income families like hers. Her mother, a nurse who worked double shifts, had received an eviction notice 2 weeks earlier. The reason? None was given. Ava's voice trembled at first as she recounted the events leading up to that notice. "My mom works harder than anyone I know," she said, her words punctuated by the faint quiver of emotion. "She spends her days and nights caring for people in the hospital, but when it came to our home, no one cared for us. We were told to leave with no explanation." She took a deep breath, her eyes scanning the room. "This policy isn't just unfair," Ava argued, her voice gaining strength. "It's destroying lives. Families are being torn apart, children are being forced out of schools, and people are losing their jobs because they have nowhere to stay." Judge Morrison sighed, clearly unimpressed. "And what exactly do you propose we do about it, young lady? Overhaul the entire housing system based on one eviction notice?" A ripple of murmurs passed through the courtroom, and Ava's cheeks flushed. But she didn't back down. Her hands, though slightly shaky, worked quickly as she flipped through her documents and pulled out a graph. She held it up for all to see, her voice steady now. "This isn't just about my family. It's a systemic issue. The data shows a clear pattern of discrimination against minority and low-income tenants, and it's illegal under federal law." She stepped forward, placing the graph on the judge's bench. The chart, marked with bold lines and numbers, revealed a troubling trend. A steady increase in no-cause evictions, with a disproportionate impact on certain neighborhoods. The judge's smirk faded as he leaned forward, adjusting his glasses to examine the evidence. For the first time, there was a flicker of interest in his eyes. The courtroom's mood shifted. Even the murmuring crowd grew quiet. Ava continued, her words cutting through the silence like a blade. "Your Honor, this isn't just about statistics. It's about people. Families who've lived in their homes for years, paying rent on time, contributing to their communities, only to be discarded like they don't matter. It's about justice. And isn't that what this court is here to uphold?" She looked directly at the judge, her gaze unwavering. The room seemed to hold its breath as everyone waited for his response. But Judge Morrison said nothing, his eyes fixed on the graph in front of him. For the first time that day, Ava felt like she'd broken through his armor of indifference. The seed of doubt she'd planted was beginning to take root. As Ava continued to present her case, her passion was undeniable. She shared stories of other families in her neighborhood who had faced similar fates, some of whom were in the courtroom that day. Mothers wiped away tears as Ava spoke about children sleeping in cars and parents working 3 jobs just to afford motel rooms. Her words painted vivid pictures of desperation, and the raw emotion in her voice made it impossible for anyone to look away. One story stood out among the rest. Ava unfolded a small, crumpled piece of paper and explained that it was a letter from her 8-year-old brother Malik. She cleared her throat, her hands trembling slightly, and began to read. "Dear Judge, I don't understand why we have to leave. I like my room and my school. I'm scared because I don't know where we'll go. Please let us stay. Love, Malik." A sob escaped from somewhere in the crowd, followed by the muffled sounds of others trying to hold back tears. Ava's own voice wavered as she folded the letter and placed it back on the podium. "He's just a kid," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "He shouldn't have to be scared like this. None of us should." Even Judge Morrison's usually stoic expression softened. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on the bench, and regarded Ava with a mix of curiosity and something that resembled respect. "Miss Carter," he said, addressing her directly for the first time, "you've clearly put a lot of thought into this. But the law is the law. What precedent are you relying on to challenge this policy?" Ava didn't hesitate. She reached into her folder and pulled out a highlighted court case, holding it up for the judge to see. Edwards v. City of Memphis, 1986. The ruling established that blanket eviction policies without due process violate the 14th Amendment's Equal Protection Clause. The room buzzed with whispered astonishment. A teenager citing constitutional law? No one had expected this. Judge Morrison's eyes widened slightly as he adjusted his glasses and began flipping through his legal books. He skimmed the case Ava had referenced, his brow furrowing as he absorbed the implications. Ava stood silently, her heart pounding as she watched the judge. The crowd, too, was transfixed, hanging on every moment. For the first time, it felt like the tide was turning. The judge's usual air of authority seemed to waver as he grappled with the weight of Ava's argument. The courtroom had been transformed, not just into a place of law, but a battleground for justice. The hearing went on for hours. Ava faced a barrage of questions from Judge Morrison and the opposing counsel, but she didn't falter. She answered each query with precision, her responses grounded in extensive research and an unshakable conviction. The crowd watched in awe as she meticulously dismantled counter-arguments, her voice steady and clear. When the opposing counsel tried to discredit her by pointing out her age, Ava countered with a calm yet cutting response. "Respectfully, my age doesn't negate the validity of my evidence. Facts remain facts regardless of who presents them." The room erupted in quiet murmurs of approval, and even Judge Morrison allowed himself a small smile. By the end of the day, the room was captivated by her determination and poise. She'd turned what many assumed would be a fleeting moment into a powerful demonstration of resilience and intellect. The courtroom, which had once felt cold and indifferent, now buzzed with a palpable sense of admiration. As the session adjourned, Judge Morrison sat back in his chair, rubbing his temples. The weight of the day's revelations was evident in his posture. Finally he spoke, his voice softer than anyone had ever heard it. "Miss Carter," he began, his tone devoid of its usual sharpness, "you've given this court a lot to think about. I underestimated you, and for that, I apologize." Ava blinked, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. Her carefully maintained composure threatened to break, but she managed to hold it together. "Thank you, Your Honor," she replied, her voice thick with emotion. "I just want what's right." Judge Morrison nodded, his expression thoughtful. "We'll reconvene tomorrow to discuss the next steps. Until then, know that your efforts today were not in vain. You've done something remarkable." As Ava gathered her documents and left the courtroom, the crowd erupted into applause. Strangers approached her to offer words of encouragement, some even thanking her for speaking up. She felt a mix of relief and hope, not just for her family, but for all the families whose voices had gone unheard for too long. For the first time in weeks, she allowed herself to believe that change was possible. The judge didn't issue a ruling that day, but the case sparked a citywide conversation. News outlets picked up the story, and Ava became an unexpected symbol of hope and resilience. Her story spread far and wide, inspiring debates on housing policies and igniting grassroots movements. Activists rallied around her cause, pushing for comprehensive reforms to protect tenants from unjust eviction practices. Months later, after extensive deliberation, Judge Morrison ruled in Ava's favor, declaring the policy unconstitutional. His decision sent shockwaves through the legal system. setting a precedent that would safeguard countless families in the future. Legal scholars hailed it as a landmark ruling, a victory for equal protection under the law. Outside the courthouse on the day of the verdict, Ava stood surrounded by her family, friends, and supporters. Her mother's arms wrapped tightly around her, tears of pride streaming down her face. Reporters clamored for interviews, their cameras capturing the moment Ava finally allowed herself a full, genuine smile. She had done it. She had changed history, not just for her family, but for countless others who had once felt powerless. "This isn't the end," Ava told the gathered crowd, her voice ringing with determination. "This is just the beginning. We still have work to do, but today we proved that no matter who you are or where you come from, you can make a difference." As the crowd cheered, Judge Morrison watched from the window of his chambers. A rare smile crossed his face as he reflected on the case that had challenged his assumptions and reignited his belief in the power of justice. Ava's courage had reminded him why he'd become a judge in the first place, to uphold what was right, even when it came from the most unexpected places. And so, the story of Ava Carter became more than a legal victory. It became a testament to the strength of one voice, a voice that refused to be silenced, a voice that sparked change. Thank you so much for watching this story of courage and resilience. If Ava's journey inspired you or made you think about the power of standing up for what's right, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment below and share your takeaways or experiences. You never know who might be touched by your words. If you enjoyed this story, give it a big thumbs up to support our channel and help us reach more amazing viewers like you. Don't forget to share this video with your friends and family. Let's spread Ava's powerful message far and wide. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss another compelling story. Together, we can keep sharing stories that inspire change and make a difference. Thank you for being part of our community.